Back when I didn't know anything, I used to host an advice show. It was called No Church in the Wild, and it was, at times, pretty popular. I used to solicit questions through Tumblr, and I would get hundreds of them. A totally mind-boggling level of engagement by today's standards, though at the time it didn't really impress me. Every couple of days, I would move all the latest questions to a Google Doc, and I would pick at them on breaks at work, sometimes revising my answers for weeks until I had something that I liked. I'd print that out, and I would tape it to the back of a card, and then I'd wait until I had 4 or 5 good questions and answers on the card, and then I would grab Jory or Christy to hold the camera, and whatever friends were kicking around would tag along, and we'd head out onto the street somewhere in Portsmouth and shoot them all in an hour or two. And I did this for years, about 100 episodes, and it was really fun. I have universally positive memories about doing it. There was this one episode that angered the then relatively nascent MRA community, and I got that same thrill that I used to get when righteous TV videos got posted on white supremacist websites and white supremacists would threaten to kill us. It doesn't feel as good to me now to make bad people angry. It just sort of makes me sad, but back then it made me very happy. There are a lot of other fun connections coming from that show. Dan Brown, otherwise known as Pogo Bat, he guest hosted No Church in the Wild for a week, and his camera operator was a then up-and-coming comedian named Akilah Hughes. I also knew this guy Tad Shackles with a radio show out in California, a major market radio show, and he asked me to adapt a couple of episodes into a radio-friendly format and put them on the air, which was one of a series of events that led directly to the creation of the show that you're listening to right now. I mean, actually, there's a pretty good chance that you're listening to this show as a direct result of watching No Church in the Wild, so I probably don't have to tell you that much about it. But people would ask me all kinds of stuff, dealing with roommates, money advice, sex advice, and, the questions were always, as a rule, submitted anonymously. So I never gave much thought to who was actually asking them.
Hey, Zach, can you hear me?
So this is Matt. I called him up after he left a comment on an old video. This video. Last month, me and this native Brazilian girl finally sealed the deal. Which, by the way, was recorded on a tennis court. That's what you can hear in the background. Also, since you can't actually see the video, I guess I should say that I am reading the question right now, then I'm going to start answering it. You get it. Last month, me and this native Brazilian girl finally sealed the deal. We'd met a couple of times. She was living in London and I was traveling there. And then that third time, we ended up in my hotel room. We didn't sleep. She played my favorite song, Blink-182's I Miss You, and I'm pretty sure I fell in love. Like, seriously, one of those perfect situations. The problem is, that was her last night in the country, and now she's the better part of 6,000 miles away. What do I do? Okay, so now in the video, I look up from the card and I start giving my answer. Am I over-explaining this? Well, one of the best things about last night in the country sex, just like last day of summer camp sex and night before lethal injection sex, is the finality of the thing. You can throw everything you got at it, because it's not going to happen again. I mean, even the song she put on complements the whole theme of the night. You're only a voice inside my head? That probably should have been a red flag for you when she popped it in the iPod dock, I'm assuming. Your whole night for me is Wes Anderson's Hotel Chevalier. So the first thing that I would do, if I were you, is an honest emotional assessment of all of your feelings outside of the context of that whole heady emotional milieu in the hotel room. Did you really love her, or did you just love the idea of her? Does she love you, or was she just allowing herself to love freely for a couple of hours, without consequences, just to see what it felt like? Does it feel like we're writing our first novel together right now? That might be what's happening. And then after you've taken emotional inventory, go to Brazil, obviously. And I mean do that regardless of what you decide about this particular girl. If the love is real, find her. And if it's not, fuck her. There are plenty of other hot girls you can have sex with in hotel rooms while you listen to arty punk rock. I'm pretty sure Carnival even has an option in one of their cruises. I used to end every episode with this gunshot sound effect, but then, as gun violence in the country started to ramp up, it felt very weird to me, so I stopped. And it became a whole thing in the comments where every week, a couple of people would advocate to bring back the gunshot, and it would get all these upvotes, and it really and truly drove me crazy. Because, I focused so much on creating these word-perfect responses to every question, and that focus on the gunshot sound effect made it seem like nobody cared, or made me feel like my responses were actually not good or funny at all, and I was just easily duping people via sound effects. I wondered if what I was doing was any good at all, or if my entire audience was just a bunch of sameness-craving Neanderthals looking for the dopamine hit that the sound of a gunshot disturbingly provided. I actually thought I was over the whole gunshot controversy, but apparently I'm not, so... Anyway, Matt comments on this video a couple of weeks ago. At this point, the video is 7 years old. He says, I asked this question years ago. Finally came to Brazil to see her this year. Naturally, I needed more information. Let's lay out what happened here, okay? So, 7 years ago, I mean, actually, I guess maybe, I don't even know when you asked the question, because I had a tradition with No Church in the Wild of ignoring people's questions for a long time. And it was in part because I was trying to avoid actually impacting anyone's life.
You know, I don't think you ignored me for that long. I feel like if I remember rightly, you answered in a couple weeks after I sent the question.
Now, the very casual writing process of No Church in the Wild was really the main reason that I would deliver my advice so late. If you've ever, been on this podcast, you know how long it takes me to finish things. But I always maintained publicly that I was going for comedy only, and I didn't actually want to impact anybody's life. And of course, that dovetailed very nicely with the whole taking forever thing. I don't even know if it was really true, but it's what I always said. I mean, doesn't anybody who starts an advice show at least sort of want to help people, maybe without even knowing it? I mean, it is one of the many projects that I just sort of backed into. It actually started back on my blog as a fashion advice column, where I would answer questions from Esquire's Ask Nick Sullivan section, which was always my most loathed page of that magazine. It was always these rich guys asking for advice about matching their $900 Italian loafers with their $1,000 Persian sweater. But as I ran out of issues of Esquire to parody, it just started morphing, because the question and answer format is such a fun, creative crutch. It's such a renewable resource. I don't know, though. It was all so long ago, and it's actually kind of shocking and anxiety-inducing to try and locate your motivations from a decade ago and not be able to find them. I know why I'm doing what I do now, but who even was the guy who started No Church in the Wild, and what did he want out of it? I don't know. So it's hard to say, I guess, in the end, if I ever intended on actually helping anyone, but it turns out I did.
She's sat just over there, not wanting to be on camera. Oh, fuck. She's only recently moved in as well, so she came back with me from Brazil.
Hello.
Welcome to the last podcast. I'm Zach Little. This episode is about how I helped a cross-continental couple stay together and didn't even know about it. It's also about love and vaccinations at the time of coronavirus. I was originally hoping to talk to a literal matchmaker for this episode too, because it turns out the last American match factory is in New Hampshire. They didn't return my emails. Too bad, because there's definitely an interesting history to matches, and you can trace their decline in America to the 1970s, which, it turns out, has nothing to do with the gradual public awareness of the dangers of smoking, though that, in and of itself, is also an interesting topic. I met this guy through work, Dr. Larry McCullough, and he works on the study of childhood trauma. He says it took about 50 years for the clear and obvious truth about smoking to be absorbed and acted on by the American public. Dr. McCullough uses it as a metaphor because the research on the negative impact of childhood trauma, like smoking, is now inarguable. But he doesn't want it to take another 50 years for this information to be absorbed and acted upon. Anyway, the reason that match production declined in America in the 1970s is because of the advent of the butane lighter. I bet a PR person for the Match Factory could have told that story in a very compelling way, not in the rambling and disordered anecdote I just gave you, but, that's what happens when you turn down an interview request. Okay, so 7 years ago, Matt meets Juliana. He's visiting London. He lives about 2 hours outside of the city, and she's visiting London from Brazil.
So we met a couple times. So I wasn't supposed to be in London. She was in a bar on her own, and we ended up talking. And we met up a couple more times before kind of last night in the countryside. But it was weird. I saw her on the first night, and it's should I kiss her? But no moment felt right.
Now, Matt and Juliana are a very attractive young couple, as in currently still young. So young, in fact, that it didn't totally make sense that they were able to meet in a bar 7 years ago, let alone have sex in a hotel room on their third sort of date without, a chaperone. You brought a friend with you that last night? Is that what you said?
I actually brought a friend with me that last night just in case something wasn't going to happen. And then quietly had a conversation, go the fuck home.
That's a good friend. That's a good friend who shows up to just be the safety net, and then leaves when they're no longer needed. I like that. So, you know, we don't need to be seedy here. You guys you had a nice night together.
Yeah, it was a lovely night. It was memorable.
And then the next morning, like, was it like literally next morning, I got to go get on a plane?
Yeah, so I had one more day in London. I went around and then had to leave the next day and then saying like, I'll never see you again.
What happened immediately after you left? And then what happened for those 7 years?
We ended up, I think she waited about a month to contact me on Facebook or something.
Mm-hmm.
We spoke for about a year, and then she did move back to London, back to the UK.
Somewhere in that year of correspondence, Matt sends Juliana a link to the No Church in the Wild episode, which they somehow both construe as a romantic gesture, even though at the end I literally say, fuck her. Sorry about that, Juliana. I didn't know you at the time.
Every time I did something bad, I'd make sure to send her that video, like, look how much I love you.
It was a thing, yeah.
It's the backup net. Look.
Yeah, he only showed me when we had to fight and he had to do something like, oh, look at that.
Oh my God, I can't, that's a very funny way to get out of having of apologizing. I can't believe it.
As far as a cheap and easy romantic gesture, that video saved my bacon quite a few times.
So when she looks at me now, does she just like think back on all the like shitty things that you did? Like just remember various disagreements?
Oh my God, I fucking hope not.
But there were more conflicts, and apparently my video was not enough to heal all wounds.
We dated for a couple years, and one of us was a bit of an idiot, and I've got no idea who it was. We broke up in 2015. 2015? Yeah.
Time passes, and Matt and Juliana remain intermittently in touch, but definitely broken up. Now, if I had known about all this back then, I could have tried to make a second video, help them out a little bit. But this time, the second time, the relationship got an assist from another very unlikely source, COVID-19.
Even we didn't spoke for so long, I would dream about him and then wake up with a message from him. Like, it was very odd. I was always thinking about you.
That's very romantic.
And this year we started talking again.
Yeah.
So she messaged me in April, like, hey, hope you're okay with all the corona stuff going on. And we just started talking again.
And here's where we get to why Matt commented on my video now and not, back when they first reunited. Because if you listened closely to my advice, not that you should, but if you did, my only actual advice was go to Brazil.
Now, I always promised that I'd go and see her in Brazil, and I never did. So as soon as the borders opened up and I could go and travel, I bought a plane ticket and went over.
Yeah.
I should mention this visit to Brazil and the part of the conversation that you're hearing right now happened early last fall. Things are pretty bad in Brazil at the moment, COVID-wise. Matt and Juliana made it through a pretty narrow window. And it turned out to be a significant visit, so it's a good thing they did.
She wasn't going to move with me this time. She was going to play it cool and wait until the end of January to move to the UK again. She decided to buy a ticket after I got there.
What was it like traveling, both of you, back and forth in all of this right now? Were you on like an empty plane?
It's weird. So I travel for work. So I fix medical equipment all over Europe. So I get the odd plane every now and then. It's a lot less in Corona. So the first couple flights, like the flights there, were empty. There was no one on them. There was the flight across the Atlantic, there's a Boeing 777 with 20 people on it. Like, it's the quietest thing I've ever done. You can have 4 seats to yourself. It's the best way to explore flights. Coming back was really weird. It's very busy. You wouldn't think that there's a virus going on because some airlines are still taking bookings all the way up to the maximum number. So I think I was on a full plane from her city to Sao Paulo. From Sao Paulo to Frankfurt, there was a full plane, and then
from Frankfurt to London, it was again another full plane. So you wouldn't think that Corona is happening on air travel. Like, you have to wear a mask, which for some reason a lot of people just don't. Yeah, it's quite scary sometimes. When you've got a lot of space to yourself, it's fine, but you've got to remember that you are basically on a metal box with lots of other people breathing next to you, which is the worst time to it's the worst time in the world to have that happen. I actually messaged Swiss Group, so like Swiss, Lufthansa, like a bunch of European airlines, and their statement is, we've got very special air filters that are going to protect you. You're going to be safer in our planes than you could be, in the airport. It's like, I work in immunology. I know that's not fucking true.
So yeah, when I learned that Matt worked in the field of medical technology and immunology, I had a whole new set of questions for him. And I just want to say that the audio is occasionally a little glitchy. That's Zoom across continents for you. And one word that weirdly, consistently gets obscured is ELISA, E-L-I-S-A. It's a blood test. It's an antibody test, I think. I'm honestly just Googling it right now, but that's what Matt's saying, ELISA. Oh, and I also just want to say that this part of the conversation happened before the release of the Pfizer and Moderna and other vaccines, but because actually getting that vaccine is a long way off for most of us, this information is really not out of date. Sometimes it feels like people need to be reminded that really, so far, absolutely nothing has changed.
There are a lot of tests being done, and I'm in talks with a lot of companies that make kits, but basically all these kits, the really accurate ones, have to be done on what's called an ELISA. So it's like a gel plate, it's electrophoresis. And to do it by hand, it takes a very skilled technician. And to do it automatically, it takes a very expensive piece of machinery. So it's only a very first world kind of test that we have at the moment. So companies like BD are installing agility machines that can run kind of 8 of these at once. But 8 is not a lot. You can run a lot of samples on those 8 kits, but it takes 40 minutes. The testing is very difficult to produce in such a short time span, and I don't believe a lot of it has been properly tested. So the company I work for has only just released our ELISA kits to run on CVM machines and BD agilities. So we've only got 2 automated methods for running these kits. I don't think the testing's been put through enough QC. I know it hasn't in our company, and I don't think a lot of companies have done it either.
So do you think that leads to more false positives or false negatives?
The antibodies attach themselves to the germs.
It's hard to tell because neither of them are very good. I'd rather see false positives in this situation than false negatives, because I'd rather err on the side of caution. But it really just depends on how the kit has been made and how well it's worked. Because we work with immunoglobulins, so you can do an IgG specific for the coronavirus. So that's your internal antibody, and it's a memory cell, like you learnt in biology when you're in school. So the memory cell, you have a bunch of those, and you find something that kind of attaches those memory cells, and that's how you can tell you're developing antibodies. And if you've got antibodies, it means you've either had the virus or you can see the virus, or you have had it. And that's kind of the best way of knowing if you have been infected, to do an antibody test. But a lot of the tests that have come out are antigen tests, so they're looking for the actual virus. Now, those are the things that basically your result is running at random, because anything with the same kind of receptors on that virus will then be picked up by an antigen test. Now, there hasn't been enough testing to know how many antigens have a similar place, but that's why we're running basically at random. You can't tell because it all depends on what someone else has in their system. So it's really hard to kind of look because there hasn't just been enough long-term study.
Now, are the antigens is there any evidence that suggests that antigens are similar based on disease type? other, because like a coronavirus is a type of virus, right? So is there like
Yeah.
is there like an antigen pattern that just corresponds to like different coronaviruses, or could someone literally just have a common cold or some other like bacterial infection or something, and it have antigens that come close enough to coronavirus to produce a false positive? Like, I guess I'm wondering which is more likely.
But under stimulus
Well,
of the germs,
this is the
tiny
really difficult
particles
thing.
called
So
antibodies are
um,
being produced.
most often you'll get very different, because they're produced by random. They're produced by the virus in mutations. So this COVID-19 is a mutation of what is known as a coronavirus. So that's why it's got a different set of receptors, and it can be identified as different. But every time any virus mutates, now you think how many people there are in the world and how many different types of viruses there are. Because like the cold, you get one every year, you get a flu every year, and every time it's because they've got a different receptor on them. So that your body has to make a different type of antibody to fight that virus or that bacteria. So statistically, it's likely that the tests that we have, if they're not perfect for the coronavirus, they might accept a couple other viruses as well. But it depends on so many factors, because you've got individual mutations in your body as well. So normally, and in most cases, almost all cases, you won't have a similar enough receptor. It's really hard to you shouldn't ever see the same receptors on two viruses, but you also shouldn't see the amount of false positives and negatives that we do on coronavirus on the testing.
See, now this is why I wanted to keep calling this episode Matchmaker even after the Match Factory ghosted me. All this talk of antigens and receptors and the statistical unlikelihood of two viruses matching one antibody? No wonder people believe in soulmates. It's imprinted on us at a biological level. A lid for every pot. Is that what that expression means? I continued to talk to Matt after our initial conversation, just chatting back and forth on Instagram, and we frequently found ourselves comparing UK culture to American culture, trying to map out the differences. I can see why that was top of mind for him. That's a cross-continental romance for you. As for me, I don't know. I mean, I was probably interested just because I was watching a lot of Ted Lasso. Can I stop for a second and just plug that show? I know that an Apple TV subscription is like the least necessary thing in the world right now. They have like 3 shows. I got a free year because my mom bought me a new Apple TV for Christmas. But if I had known how good Ted Lasso was, I would have paid for it gladly and much earlier. I didn't know how much I needed it in my life, which is what a lot of people say. Ted Lasso is a show about acceptance and leadership and belief. It initially comes across as vaguely crass and overly British, but it finds a rhythm quickly. This is not one of those shows where you gotta wait till like episode 6 or something to lock in. I laughed, I cried, I wanted to be a better person. It is warm and lovely and funny, and that's really the only thing that I want out of television lately. Warmth and open-heartedness. And Bobby Flay. I've watched like 100 episodes of Beat Bobby Flay already this year. It's a whole separate thing. Anyway, after talking with Matt on Instagram for a couple of weeks, we convened again to talk about whatever other bullshit we wanted. Somewhere around here, I have my bass guitar that I've had since I was 14, and I'm not totally sure that I've changed the strings since.
I've got my first one upstairs, and yet same boat. I don't think I've ever changed the strings.
Well, it's brutal. It's brutal with a bass guitar.
If one snaps, you're like you'll lose a hand if one snaps on you. But I don't know if one has ever snapped.
Yeah, I've never seen it happen. Like even on stage, like concerts and stuff. I've never seen a bass string break. I've seen plenty of guitar strings break, but
I'm going to be looking out for this now. At some point, a bass string is going to snap.
Yeah, it's had to happen to somebody, right?
Active immunity.
It's really weird to have felt in a way like I saw this coming, but there's like a lot of stuff that has happened over the years that when I kind of take it together, it's like, oh, I think this is not at all surprising, actually. And maybe part of the reason that I haven't had as hard a time processing it as other people is that it didn't actually surprise me.
People have been mentioning pandemic level events for quite a while. Like I read a Harvard paper on RNA vaccines, and as a new
as a new method in 2015. It's like, oh, this will be great if in a future pandemic event, even on like the short scale, we all saw this coming when it was happening in China and they were locking people in buildings. We're a year later now, and no one seems any smarter about it.
Yeah, well, they've got over here, they're like televising vaccinations. So, which is in part to counter the anti-vaccination sort of propaganda that's spreading like wildfire across social media. I'm even getting it on my like Instagram Discover page, which is like normally just like models and drummers. Suddenly, the algorithm they have an idea of what they think I want to see. And but suddenly it's like, oh, and also here's some anti-vaccination propaganda for you.
Firstly, the fact that models come up on everyone's Discover page still feels weird to me, because I did wonder if it was just me, but
no, they're trying to sell you. They're trying to sell you bathing suits.
His own antibodies.
Hopefully, people who bought their brand new bathing suit last year, they get to debut it this summer.
But it'll be out of fashion. You can't wear something that's a year out of fashion.
But don't you think everything? But fashion got delayed a year too. Like, didn't everything? Everything is basically just nothing happened in 2020. All the movies that come out next year are movies that got filmed in 2018 and 2019. There's going to be a couple of movies where it's like there's very few locations and people are like suspiciously not near each other really ever the whole time, and you'll be like, oh, okay, that was a COVID era production.
I would genuinely love to see more movies like that. So I think Top Gear, the guys, Jeremy Clarkson and their crew, they've been filming during this year in Scotland, and it's weird watching kind of snippets of television where it's like socially distanced, mask wearing, like all these movies are going to come out in a couple of years' time where everyone's got masks on and things because they weren't allowed to film otherwise.
We were surprised at how long it took it to trickle into commercials. Like, the commercials only now have incorporated like people wearing masks. I remember I attended this Ad Week seminar about advertising in COVID, basically. And this was back in like June. And they really hadn't figured out anything. Like, these people from Ad Week, they were like, well, what we're doing is just making people who appear to be relatives in photos. So if they don't need to be wearing a mask or socially distant, and it's like, this is what you came up with. It looks like they're related, so it's probably fine. But now, like holiday shopping commercials and stuff have people in stores, dad with the kids, all wearing masks. So they eventually caught up, but it took a lot longer.
Fortunately, there's a safer way.
Between our conversations, you had definitely asked some kind of like, what's the difference between the UK and the United States sort of questions that I was not totally sure how to answer, but I definitely think we could start with garden leave, because you said you were on garden leave, and I said, I don't know what that is.
We have a lot of employment protections here. So it's very difficult to actually get rid of someone once they're working, especially if they've been working for you for 2 years. Basically, when I handed in my notice, I have to give, I think a 2-month notice is in my contract. But they decided that because I'm going to such a close competitor, like so close, I'm going to the same customers, the same labs, like the machines are next to each other. They decided, rather than having me work 2 months, you can just go home and sit around for a couple of months until you start your new job. Depending on where you work and what you're doing, it's something that's offered to you. It's obviously not everywhere. Like, you don't get it working at Home Depot. Mm-hmm. But it's a really nice, it's not for your benefit at all. It's because they don't want you taking any information with you. Even though
there's kind of like a positive and a negative version of that in the United States. One is that, if you are leaving one relatively good job with benefits to another relatively good job with benefits, your benefits tend to overlap by like about a month. So if you did time it right, you could basically leave your job on the first of 1 month and then line up your next job to start at the beginning of the following month if you wanted to and if you could afford it. In a lot of cases, like when I left my last job, I had a lot of vacation rollover time that I just got paid. So I got paid like an extra 2 weeks, but I did not line it up properly at all, and I left my job on Friday and started my new job on Monday. Then the sort of sinister version of that in the United States is if you give your 2-week notice at like a retail job or something, most of the time they will just walk you right out the door, and just like, oh, you're quitting, you're fired, you're gone. And it, ostensibly it has to do with like thinking that you're going to steal a bunch of stuff for your last 2 weeks, but it always comes across instead as like, we're angry at you for leaving, so we're punishing you, which is very odd, but that's how it
This
goes.
is through vaccination.
But eventually we got into discussing the vaccines, specifically RNA vaccines, which don't work the way a normal vaccine would. Traditional vaccines are a weakened version of a real pathogen. Your body forms antibodies for it while feeling none or few of the effects. RNA vaccines are like injecting the instruction manual for antibody production directly into your cells. Yeah, has there been like an RNA vaccine before this for like a disease that anyone would recognize the name of?
A substance called a vaccine is introduced into the body.
I'm not sure if I read in all my readings that they've had research to be able to use this for HIV and cancer, but this is all still research at the moment. This is certainly the biggest exposure an RNA-based vaccine will have. This is going to be the most produced in such a short amount of time.
Can I just say that I kind of love this? It's my favorite kind of story. RNA vaccines. They're the unknown underdog, and here they are, stepping out onto the national stage, and their first at-bat could not be bigger, could not be higher stakes. Here's the pitch. This is weird, but it makes me think about Amanda Gorman, poet laureate, who got up on that stage at Joe Biden's inauguration, a totally unknown figure to the American public, and absolutely destroyed. At a moment where we could not be more on edge, and in many ways could not be in a worse or more grim mood about our country and the state of it, she reminded us about what is great about America, what was truly great all along. It absolutely felt like the dawn after the darkness, and I still get teary thinking about it. And I am similarly rooting for RNA vaccines now.
The benefit of this type of vaccine is you can produce them very quickly. So whereas the WHO will spend almost a year making a new flu vaccine every year, in theory, you can isolate the RNA of a pathogen and produce a mostly working vaccine in a week. This is kind of Pfizer think they can do it in a week. Realistically, you'd look at kind of a month to get something done, and probably 2 months to actually make it. This is the really interesting thing. This is the biggest kind of test that we're ever going to have of these kind of vaccines, and I think it is going to be. It looks like it's going to be a resounding success because they've all been tested. And I'm really kind of hopeful.
Well, that's good. I mean, the timeline on this, it's funny to me because I remember when this pandemic first started happening, they said, we'll probably have a vaccine in 18 months. So it actually seems like it was kind of right on schedule. But when they first started out, they were not envisioning an RNA vaccine. They were envisioning a normal, the conventional kind of like antibody vaccine you were talking about, right? So I don't even know when the RNA vaccine became part of the conversation.
So I think the main issue is that, well, people kind of approach this from all angles. So you didn't just have kind of everyone like switching over. Mm-hmm. But one of the advantages is that they don't have to actually cultivate pathogens to make an RNA vaccine. So it's run by DNA sampling. So they sample the DNA, they find the little bit of RNA that actually makes the antigen receptors, which is what your body uses.
Just want to point out that the Biden administration and the CDC are missing a huge marketing angle on this vaccine right now. One of the earliest and most prominent people who allowed himself to be studied for vaccine research was Tom Hanks. meaning his DNA was likely sampled, meaning that in some sense, we are getting Tom Hanks' RNA injected into us. Who wouldn't want to be a little more like Tom Hanks? Okay, I know the QAnon conspiracy believes Tom Hanks is a high-ranking member of an elite pedophile ring, so maybe they don't want to be more like him in that sense. But of course, the creepy thing about QAnon is that it feels like they sort of do. What are the known side effects of this, like the Pfizer, the RNA vaccine?
I have not actually looked up any side effects. In theory, because of the way an RNA vaccine works, there shouldn't be any. Shouldn't.
Right.
This is a relatively new technology, and if there are any side effects that come of it, we're going to start seeing them over the next 12, 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
We're not expecting anything major. We're not expecting anything that's going to actually hurt anyone. We're not expecting any side effects at all. But if any of them turn up, then this is the kind of time that you'd see, and there's going to be a lot of medical papers written looking at if there is a side effect response, if there is an adverse reaction.
All of our medical experts are going to become like our therapists over the next 6 months. Like, I got the vaccine. I don't know. I just feel a little sad today. Is that a side effect? My ear is itching a little bit. Is that a side effect? Anecdotally, the people that I know who've had both doses of the vaccine, at the moment I can think of about a dozen, including 2 former guests on this podcast who are healthcare workers, have only experienced mild fatigue, which the totally unscientific storyteller in me wants to just attribute to the body having to manufacture all those antibodies once it receives the RNA manual. My friend John Burns also says he's compulsively purchasing lots of Microsoft products and can't explain why, but I'm pretty sure he's just kidding. I guess when I hear you say that it's relatively new technology, I'm not totally sure how to understand that because I don't typically follow medical technology. Like when I was a kid, right, and you got a filling in your teeth, they would do a metal filling, and the metal filling had mercury in it. So over time they realized that was a bad idea, and now they do this other thing. It's like a plastic filling or something. I'm not even sure what it is. I can't even tell where they are in my mouth because I can't tell what they look like compared to the metal ones. That's like a technological leap forward that I can understand, right? And the risk is that maybe the plastic's not as good as the metal, and maybe your filling falls out more easily or something. Until now, when I go to the doctor and get a flu shot every year, I didn't know that I was getting like the conventional technology or the new technology. I wouldn't have even thought to ask. It's funny. It's a little bit funny to me that we're all becoming like vaccine experts in the same way that because of the way our election went, everybody became experts in the electoral certification process, which literally nobody cared about or knew about before at all. And suddenly everyone's an expert on electors and the electoral college.
I mean, it does seem almost strange that kind of medicine in itself has evolved, but this has all come from the last kind of, I suppose realistically, we're looking at the last kind of 30 years of work in kind of DNA sequencing, and it's kind of reached kind of points where it can be usable and branches off. And being able to use RNA means that you can produce so much more vaccine, so much more cheaply and easily. But yeah, it's like you don't notice medical technology changing because I've got titanium pins in my leg. It's like, I'm sure at some point they'll change them to carbon fiber or plastic or something that might do the trick. But traditional medicine is still using kind of 80-year-old technology. Like we evolved from just wrapping a tourniquet around a leg and cutting it off to being able to repair them. And we do this over kind of quite long periods of time.
Yeah, and the adoption too of technology definitely changes even from like doctor to doctor. Whereas because in the United States, right, we have a lot of doctors who are like 70 something years old. And I mean, I've had different eye doctors, and the level of technology from optical office to optical office is like, my wife is an optician, so she knows. She's like, this is a 25-year difference in technology from this office to the other office. It all still works, and it's harder for a 70-year-old doctor to retrain on like the new machines. It's like that's the reason that our progress is so weird and staggered, is it's attached to people, and like you said, it's these 30-year timelines where like 30 years of work pays off in this moment, and you're like, wait a minute, like what are the odds that I'm alive in this moment that this 30 years of work paid off? And it's like, well, there's another moment next year where 30 years that started 1 year after that last 30-year cycle also pays off. It's hard to follow it because we think that technological progress should look like this, and it looks like, like a stairway, and like a stairway that's partly collapsing in one spot, but then there's like a ramp that you can walk on over this part, and then I realized halfway through I was doing this visual illustration that I shouldn't do that for a podcast, so like we think it's a straight line, but it's not a straight line. It's a very weird, jagged, looping back and forward line.
It's kind of like you're in a big shopping mall, and you want to get to the floor above, and you've got about 15 different types of staircase. It's like, do you choose the small steps where you make slow incremental progress? Do you take the really big ones and risk damaging your knees and falling back down? Do you try and take we call it an escalator, a moving stairs? I didn't know if that translated, but
yeah.
Do you take that and risk it breaking down? Or do you take that and risk falling in completely and going bankrupt?
Well, the good news about the escalator is that when an escalator breaks, it's still shaped like stairs, because when I was a kid, I had this idea from cartoons that like if an escalator broke, it would just flatten right into a ramp. Matt's metaphor was actually pretty good, but I think I was just so disappointed to learn that the UK term for escalator is still just escalator and not something much wackier like stair lorry, that I completely forgot what he was talking about. But yeah, there are stairs and ladders and escalators and elevators, and we're using all of them at the same time. That's modern medicine. There's going to be such a smarmy movie about the production of the vaccine, by the way, like in a year or two. It's going to be a terrible movie. It'll be directed by like Ron Howard, and it'll just be really bad. But I have been on social media, I have been really defending people's right to make bad art about COVID, because like that's actually part of this process that we're talking about. Like the process of progress is also like understanding and absorbing these stories and processing the things that happened to us. And we have to do that through some bad movies and some good movies. Like we needed the bad 9/11 movies and the bad 9/11 novels and everything. We needed all of that to get over 9/11. And this will be exactly the same way. Like for the next 10 years, every like novel that wins an award will be set in 2020. Definitely.
It'll be the 2025 Best Picture winner. It'll be a struggling researcher working for the WHO, trying to navigate losing his funding from X, Y, and Z. It's like, but we finally got it, man. We finally got it. And I agree. If it doesn't happen, I'll be very disappointed.
I want to add here that I already feel bad for the many, many actors who are going to have to play Trump over the next decade or more. A lot of them are rationalizing it now. They're coming to terms with their resemblance to him or their ability to resemble him. They're quietly working on their own take on the Trump voice. It really bums me out just thinking about it. I want to clarify too that the novels that I'm predicting won't entirely be set in 2020. A lot of them will jump back and forth over it, using it as a before and after line of demarcation, maybe also jumping into the future to examine long-term effects. Yes, I am currently describing Jennifer Egan's book, A Visit from the Goon Squad, and its relationship to 9/11, which is how I know I will be proven right.
I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this is now the scale of kind of, I think we're losing a few hundred people a day. I think you guys are losing a couple thousand people a day. We're at the scale of
9/11 a day. Yeah,
it's kind of insane how reluctant people are to pay attention to things that they can't directly see. Like, even though it's not on the TV every moment of every day, even though your episode of The Price is Right isn't being interrupted for it, Like, this is still a huge event, and because it isn't a plane crashing into a building, because it isn't, so our big one here was the 7/7 bombings. A bunch of tube trains just got blown up, and everything was interrupted. The whole country stood still in a very similar way. And we're looking at that and going, that is awful. We have to change all of these things. We have to make this safer. We have to improve security, and we have to put all these safeguards in place. And, you know, I think this is something the US and UK having quite tight similarities, that no one knows what the bloody hell they're doing. Like, there isn't a concise set of rules. There isn't a concise set of instructions where this has happened. We need to do these things and make sure that everybody is safe. We need to make sure this never happens again.
Well, it just feels like suspended trauma. Like, it feels like this thing that is, okay, so when I was a kid, my mom was dating this guy who told me one time about how he got hit in the face with a basketball in his school gym. And he fell backwards and he hit his head against the doors behind him. And he does not remember anything after that. He apparently got up, said he was fine, finished his gym class, went through his day for several hours, and then in the middle of another class suddenly started screaming in pain. And it's like he got hurt so badly in that moment that his body was like, we're dealing with this later. Like, and I think that's mostly what we're doing, right? Is we're dealing with this later. Whatever is happening to us all right now, individually and as nations and as a planet, we're like, it's too much. We're going to deal with this later. But I don't know, because we've had to make all these little micro adjustments along the way. And so the way that we shop and interact with each other and work and everything has changed probably forever. And we didn't even really notice it was happening, which might be the only way we can do it. Because in the United States, when we have like a single big traumatic event, like a giant school shooting or something, everyone says we need to make these changes, and then we don't do it. It's almost like if there was a smaller scale school shooting every single day at the same school, we would have to start doing something. But because that doesn't happen, we never do. But in this case, because of COVID, it is a school shooting happening every single day. And so we gradually have put metal detectors and different things, and we've gradually started trying to educate the students and reach out to the people, we've been making those little fixes. And all those little fixes have added up to something.
You know what the most frustrating thing is that people are watching these changes happen and just going, oh, well, it isn't me, don't care. Because whenever you go to the supermarket and you see someone who refuses to wear a mask, whenever you see someone driving and they refuse to use turn signals or headlights, like, the sun has gone down, your lights need to go on. But the people are walking around without masks, without any care to what's around them. And I don't know how to deal with those people.
Well, I have sympathy for those people, because what I see, the everyday citizen, not the politicians who are very cynically exploiting that kind of thing, but the everyday citizens who don't believe it's real. I mean, there are people who are dying of COVID in hospitals telling their nurses that the disease is a hoax. Those people, I mean, some of them just don't know that they're being lied to. But I think in a lot of cases, it's the trauma thing. They cannot accept the reality of the situation. And I understand that. It's a tough situation to wrap your head around. So the people that are in denial about it, I'm kind of sympathetic to them. I'm not sympathetic to the politicians that refuse to wear masks and that kind of thing. But the good news is, in the United States, almost all of the people who do that get COVID. And the upper level ones, like the president and Rudy Giuliani and those guys, they get great, incredible medical care, and they are fine. They're sick for 3 days and then they're fine. But like the Speaker of the House in the state house of New Hampshire, the Republican Speaker of the House, got sworn in a week ago got COVID and died. And like, so those lower level politicians are not getting the preferential treatment. It's not like I don't feel good about, I don't want anybody to get COVID and die, but the people that really actively flirt with it and then it happens to them, it's like, okay, well, fair enough, right? You touch the hot stove, you got burned.
I don't think it's something we've learned as a species, that stuff we do affects what's around us. Because, you know, we hunted whales to the brink of extinction. We've pumped loads of carbon into the atmosphere. And throughout all of human history, we've just looked at it and gone, because it doesn't directly affect us.
Yeah.
I mean, we look at global warming and climate change and we go, but I like my pickup truck.
Well, you have to think too about like the way that things always appear obvious later. Like, you know, they literally used to just dump chemicals into rivers, and the rivers would turn like green and purple and orange, and they would go, "This is fine," you know. And and now we realize, oh, that's like a pretty obvious sign that something's bad. But at the time, nobody thought it was bad. So you have to adopt that perspective, and you have to think like, all right, in 50 years, how much of this is going to seem so obvious? And I think it makes it a little, but that's thinking in a way that we're not accustomed to thinking. So the 50-year timeline that I described back there, it's too long, honestly. I mean, I didn't watch that recent TV documentary about Britney Spears, but I get the idea. And I've seen how people have been digging up TV clips from that era, showing the way that Spears and Lindsay Lohan and others were treated by broadcasters and journalists, and it is really appalling. And it's not just Access Hollywood or Matt Lauer, but people who are still held in high esteem. There's this clip I saw today of Lindsay Lohan on Letterman, and he's harassing her about rehab, and it is really, truly tough to watch, and the laughter from the audience is the worst part. Handling mental illness and substance use disorder with sensitivity and respect seems obvious now, but I know that's the benefit of lots of recent advocacy. But on a more basic level, wasn't treating a teenager like a teenager and not a piece of meat a pretty obvious call even at the time? It was not long ago. It's bewildering to look back at a time when I was alive and conscious. I mean, I was 15, but still. And realize that I saw this happening and did not recognize how bad it was. Right now, a lot of us, we think we're doing the right thing in general. We're wearing masks, we're staying home, we're learning about how marginalized people want to be seen and discussed, and we're educating ourselves about pronouns and identity and stigmatized language and the horrors of history, and we're learning to examine our role in all of it. But what else are we not seeing? What are we missing right now? Will we look back in a few years and be unable to understand what we didn't understand? Will something seem totally obvious then that is inconceivable now? Can you do anything about it? The next episode of the podcast is sort of about that. So thanks for listening today. Thank you, Matt and Juliana. And thank you to Jory and Christy and Morgan and Brittany and Bob and Dan and Akila and Tad and everybody else who ever helped out with No Church in the Wild. Have a good week. We'll be back soon.
I'm sorry. Didn't mean to do you any harm. I'm sorry, I know I tend to twist your arm. I just wanna know. I just wanna know. Am I gonna be